Welcome to the Sages Among Us. Nevada County has a legacy of rich resources, from farm and timberland to sparkling rivers of water and gold to abundant beauty and recreation, and perhaps what is the greatest treasure in any area, the people who devote countless hours and immense energy toward making their community better for everyone. The Sages Among Us attempts to find out who these people are, why they generously provide so much service to the community, and how these efforts make a positive difference for all of us. I'm your host, Brian Buckley, and today we're going to get the personal story of a citizen leader who's deeply engaged in making our community a better place. My guest tonight is artist Ruth Chase, who has resided in our area since 2001. An artist of many talents, in 2017, Ruth completed the West of Lincoln project, which was awarded a Certificate of Appreciation from the City of Los Angeles and Art in Action. Previously, she was granted a residency with the Malay Colony for the Arts in New York, and was published in Professional Artist Magazine, Catapult Art Magazine, and the Huffington Post. In fact, she's taught at the Crocker Art Museum as well. She was even a featured artist or sketch artist on the Dead Files TV program. Most recently, she has been an artist in residence with the Nevada County Arts Council, spearheading the Belonging Project, which is funded through a grant with the California Arts Council. Ruth is a graduate of the San Francisco Art Institute and lives in Nevada City with her husband and daughter. Ruth, welcome to the Sages Among Us.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely our pleasure. You know, we haven't had that many professional artists on the show. And when one mentions the word artist, I think many people conjure images of a bohemian, iconoclastic lifestyle. But the idea of community building and civic engagement doesn't immediately leap to mind when we put the title of artist on somebody. So, but your art, community engagement, community building is a real theme, particularly over the last several years. Can you tell us a little bit more about that intersection of art and community building?
Well, I think we don't often think of individual artists as art meets community, but most community art centers are focused on community and art and artist. Over the last couple of years, the last 3 years, I have put a lot of focus on interacting with community instead of focusing on painting. And so what you're talking about are these multimedia projects that ask the community to be involved.
Mm-hmm. Almost so the community is the canvas in some ways.
Yeah, the community is the medium in many ways.
Right. You know, let's go back to the beginning. Did you know you were going to be an artist as a young child, or did that develop more as an adolescent or an adult?
Actually, I was always creative, and it's not a surprise that I'm an artist. But I know I did not ever plan on being an artist. I grew up in Venice, and I was surrounded by art, but I didn't really know that other people weren't. I didn't really know the impact of growing up in that environment until I left it and was able to look back on it.
Venice is an art-centric community, isn't it?
Yes, so I learned an art history in San Francisco in 1985.
Were your parents artists?
That's a good question. No, my parents would probably be very similar to our off-the-grid community in an accidental way, sort of. My mom was, they were both out of the box. My dad, probably most creative, was very interested in the beatnik movement in the late 50s in Venice. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for instance, one of the places that we lived, I don't even know that it was a house, but we had a large acrylic clear tub that hung from our roof of our house. It had water in it, and it was filled with tadpoles. And when they matured, they'd just jump out of the house, and we had an outdoor shower. So I remember often that was their exit point to the outside. So they weren't artists, but I was definitely raised in an eclectic
and you
environment.
showered with frogs frequently.
Delightfully, I did.
Yes, okay. Well, that makes a sort of a unique take on singing in the shower, then, doesn't it? Croaking in the shower. Well, so obviously you were immersed in a creative community, including your family, that were willing to be out of the box,
Right.
and off the grid, comparatively, the social
Right.
grid in
Yeah.
Southern
Compared to
California.
nowadays,
Right, right. Looking back, how do you think that influenced you?
Well, I think a lot of people that were raised, late 60s and 70s, there were less rules, a lot more, less refinement, a lot of less focus on refinement. It definitely gave me a free spirit. And so when it came to pursuing a career in the arts, unlike many of my peers, it just wasn't ever looked upon as anything negative or, it was fully supported.
It wasn't a strange path or
No.
an intimidating one.
No. In fact, it wasn't until I moved into my first suburban community did I realize how different I was raised.
Well, talking about that, do you think was there a watershed moment or a significant individual that helped to form the person or the artist you are now?
One of the things I was thinking when we got a chance to talk earlier is that I don't know that I ever had my sights on becoming an artist, but I can say that how I got to where I'm at right now and how that relates to being community involved is that I was raised in a household with my mom primarily. And can I tell you a little story?
Oh, please.
Yeah. So one day my mom came home and we were living in Venice. We lived in a little apartment there. And I said, Mom, what took you so long? You said you were going to be home at 10 a.m., And she said, well, I was down at the catching. I got off the bus because my mom didn't drive. And I saw a woman panhandling. I hope I'm not going to cry. I might, but that's okay. I'm an artist. I can be vulnerable.
No one will see you.
Yeah, but you will. Don't take a picture. Anyhow, so my mom said, yeah, I saw this woman panhandling with her daughter. So I invited them to breakfast. And the reason why this story has always really shaped, that was one of the stepping stones that shaped me, is because not only did we grow, we're on welfare. It was just my mom and I. I mean, we had no money, like not even, I don't even know. She probably took them to breakfast and then didn't eat. So, I didn't grow up being like that, but when I became an adult, I realized the impact that she had on me and the value that she had with compassion and community. And so that would be one of the stepping stones for sure. One of the major moments.
That seems like, a prime example of how all of us lead by example more than our words and our
Well
lectures,
said. Yeah.
Are there any other, elements or specific incidents in your childhood that you can point to that,
Right.
Have
Oh,
really
yeah.
contributed to where you are now?
So let's tie this into being an artist and where I'm at. I think of two other things. One is kind of a harsh, not so warm and fuzzy. You might want to turn your radio off if the kids are listening.
Now no one is going to.
Exactly. So I went through a phase growing up in Venice where there was a time when I was at a drug dealer's house and we were all getting high. And my girlfriend started to overdose. And this is such a major moment for me. The reason why it's major is because once she started to overdose, everybody left the house. It went from 20 people to 2 people.
They were all afraid.
Oh, they were out of there. We were at the dealer's house. So, I mean, and I had never, because I was raised in Venice, in a community where there are no resources. You learn that the only resource you have is your neighbor or your friends, is your church, is the people. And so that's how I was raised. So when I Obviously at a low point in my life, when I was at that moment, I thought, wow, this is so different. So what happened after that is, besides thinking about what she survived, I should say that she survived. I was sober instantly.
Thank you for telling us that.
Yeah. She survived, and oddly enough, I remembered some class they must have taught in high school at Venice High on CPR, because it all came back. And but the next day, what I realized was that not only was community valuable to me, and that what could have happened would have altered my life completely. So I decided to, how does that tie into where I'm at now? I applied to art school as a sobriety program. And luckily it worked for me. I applied to several colleges. I got accepted. I left all the drugs and everything behind, and went off to San Francisco and went to the San Francisco Art Institute, and never looked back.
All right. So what was getting satisfied with drugs became satisfied
With
by art.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I did is I filled a void. And I think that that's a really important thing, that community does fill a void, and it allows us to find purpose in connecting with others. So yeah.
It sounds, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and you've actually kind of answered it. Let me know if there's anything more to the answer to this question. But, I was wondering what inspired you to use art as a community building, community activism tool. And I'm getting a little insight on that with that last story you told. Any other elements that have gone into that?
Well, I didn't do community-based art. I've been involved in community, especially when I didn't have a kid and I wasn't married and I had more time. But recently I realized that I could actually use my art to bridge two things that were very important to me. Not only is community important to me, but it was kind of the groundwork in which I was raised. My mom had obviously primed me for that.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, let's dive in a little bit here.
We have to go deeper? Really, I have no more good stories after that one.
Well,